Welcome to another episode of VNture Podcast, your weekly source of visual novel goodness. I am Emar, and together with Tauros, we shall venture into another discussion about VN. Well, given the topic, maybe I should correct myself and say we're back at being the non-venture podcast for those VN purists out there. As today we once more return to the topic of gameplay in VN. So what kind of bombastic Connect 4 in a dating sim did you bring as an example, Tauros?
Hey man, there are some titles I would like to see Connect 4. That'd be a step up in terms of
I know.
gameplay.
That's true.
Yes, but we won't be talking about that. We're going to be talking about visual novels that feature some aspect of gameplay. And of course, like we've mentioned before, there's a lot of differing opinions on this polarizing topic of how much a visual novel should contain gameplay, if at all, or how much is acceptable. One title I want to talk about, which everyone is surely aware of, is Doki Doki Literature Club, the free title that was released to widespread popularity even outside of typical VN fans. It starts off with a very tame, everyday premise of the main character being a high school student, and he gets roped into a literature club with his cute classmates. However, there is a psychological warning at the beginning, warning the reader of various nasty things that may happen in the game, and so the reader is perpetually put on edge through this cutesy, normal story until stuff hits the fan and things get wild. So anyways, I'm sure you're all aware of this, but I specifically want to focus on the gameplay side of things, because Doki Doki Literature Club, on the face of it, is definitely a visual novel. It has the main character, it has the character sprites, it has the backgrounds, it has the text box, it has dialogue, it has choices though. And the choices is what I want to focus on, because it's a little interesting of how DTLC handles it. There's a few parts in the game where you have to make a poem, because after all, it is the literature club, and that's what they do in their activities. And you are given like a page of words you can use to fill in spots of your poem, and then you, the player, would pick out the words you want to use. And so in this way, you pick out like a dozen or so of them, and you can craft your own little poem. And it's not like the final result means too much, it's an exercise after all, but the words that you pick appeal to the girls, some more than others. So in a way, the words you pick will kind of endear the main character towards a few of these heroines. And that slightly affects where the story goes and who gets close to him and whatnot.
It's a very interesting take on how to resonate with those characters, right? It's like, do you choose the words that vibe with those characters, and in doing so you'll get close to them?
And specifically, I want to wonder aloud, is this gameplay? How different is this?
Is so minimalistic, right?
Exactly, because in a quote-unquote typical visual novel, there'd just be choice systems.
Yes, that's true.
Where, there'd be some sort of dialogue or plot development, and someone would ask the main character, oh, well, what do you think, Taros113? And you could be like, you have your three, I agree with Yui, or I agree with Monica. And it's pretty, some of them are more blatant than others, but it's clearly, you pick a choice, and one choice appeals to a heroine more than the others. Now, if you have that same basic idea, but it's dressed up a little, where you pick the words that, appeal to the heroines with the certain mood that they like, that's still basically choices, right?
Yes, although there is, with this gameplay in mind, I would say there's one... Okay, like you said, some are more obvious than others, and there is the element of surprise. Wait, Why that one resonated, right?
Exactly. Because then you could see a few, hidden depths where you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting her to like that kind of word. I wonder
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
there's something more to her character depth than I don't know of. So I like it, but I
Yeah.
mean, I would not count that as gameplay. In fact, I would think that's taking the whole choice system to another level, which is a good thing. I want to see more unique aspects than what we usually see in visual novels.
True, that's true. This is barely a gameplay, and it's on the edge of, okay, if you consider this gameplay, you are very hard pressed to defend choices as not gameplay, right?
Yes. Which some people don't like choices, to be fair. But
that's true.
yes. And on that note, though, with Doki Doki Literature Club, there is also the bigger aspect of it, which, without going too much into spoilers, even though I'm pretty sure you all are already aware, part of the game also involves your computer's file system. And I think this is another interesting point. Is this gameplay? Does this go beyond the normal considerations of a visual novel?
Having a task outside of the game, can it count as a gameplay in the game itself?
Exactly. A lot of people consider gameplay something like, oh, a side-scrolling RPG, or they have some sort of action moment like the baseball mini game in Little Busters. But if you have to go and do some outside the fourth wall thinking, I don't think that counts as gameplay. I think that's just a very novel, approach in breaking the fourth wall, which is its own topic. But as far as gameplay, I would not classify Doki Doki Literature Club as a gameplay VN or a gameplay hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. I don't consider it a game said to me, please bake a cupcake for that action to be considered gameplay, right? Surely no VN would say so to me, right?
What is it? Hate Plus, and you had to bake a cake. An entire cake.
Yeah.
But still, not gameplay. You make a good point.
That's not a gameplay.
Yes. So as far as, the typical visual novel qualifications, I would say Doki Doki is, despite how unique it gets, it plays the whole VN formula very directly.
Okay, because now I want to test that. So with Doki Doki, we deemed it not gameplay VN, right? Okay.
I'd say so.
And I brought an example of Hate Plus, right?
Yes.
And in Hate Plus, there is a moment in which you get a console and you need to execute console commands. Is that gameplay?
I think that was just Analog Hate Story.
Sorry?
I think that was just Analog Hate Story, the first one in the series, where you had to do console commands.
Yes.
And you basically do a very minimalist application of Linux or something.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And that's its own issue. Is programming in Linux a game?
And it's so tailored, and you are so handhold even.
Yeah, they tell you what to do, but more importantly, is it even fun?
Yeah.
Well, okay, yes, that's an interesting point. I don't think that classifies as gameplay. The sort of thing you would typically more see in a stereotypical video game is usually what people are talking about, right?
True.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is just some novel concept. And even with the console commands, you can say it's some sort of interface to progress the game state.
Sure.
That was quite required to literally progress the story. And you got told what to do. So it's like, okay, I just typed in command. This is not that far detached from me pressing enter to advance the text. And yes, I said enter even though I believe space is the correct. But
oh, wow.
You knew I had to say it.
Well, whatever you say. But yeah, so speaking of something with a more recognizable, typical gameplay aspect, do you have something for us, Mark?
Oh wait, yeah. When I just saw it immediately on Steam, I bought it because this is such a unique concept of collectible card game gameplay in a VN. Because everything in Kamifuda is told through VN. Everything. It is a story about it's the set. How can I say it? It's so real because the narrative is written in the VN style all the time, except for those ritualistic duels using cards. Everything is VN, and it set up in such a way that the setting is inspired from Hogwarts, but instead of wizardry, it's more about the Arkham Horror Arcane stuff. So this is where the concept of a pact sworn, a pact bearers, and pacting with an unknown deities of Arkham and unknown origins. Right? And then you have, obviously, as anime dictates, you have a club about playing card games which invokes rituals. Don't question it, please. So that was an interesting concept, and as I shown, collecting the screenshots to run in the background, the concept of card games ever present. Everybody holds some cards somewhere on them in the sprites, and that was so hilarious to me throughout the game.
The classic card game that has taken over the world.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it's very much Yu-Gi-Oh inspired in that setting.
I do want to ask you a question. You mentioned that it's the collectible card game. We're in the world of wizardry and whatnot, but everything else aside from that is a visual novel.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, what do you mean by that? What makes everything else a visual novel?
You have sprites, you have the text box in ADV style, you have the name tags where you could expect name tags, you have all the basic functions of saving, loading, and chapters even, as you would expect a visual novel to have. You have, I don't think there's affection meter per se, but you can deepen a relationship with other characters, mostly in a friendship with power kind of way, right? Because you have a ragtag group of colleagues in a club room that can become more friendly towards each other and become friends.
Okay.
It's a very typical VN setup. In even the school setting is so commonly associated with VN. Okay, this being Hogwarts-esque, but still a high school nonetheless.
Okay.
With all the typical high school drama. I'm running to the classes, where we go together with to the lodge. Like, what the hell is going on? And then you sling spells.
Yeah, I asked that because it's always an interesting comparison for myself personally to then wonder, well, is Fire Emblem Three Houses a visual novel? Because it also shares many of these similar features. Where you have a school setting and you have, yes, the gameplay side, but then you come back and then it's hanging out with your friends, and then if you just call it 3D sprites, I guess. And obviously Fire Emblem is not a visual novel, but, what separates that from, Kamifuda, for example?
Yeah, I would say to some degree, I would say even intent, because it just feels like a VN that was written that way. I don't know how to describe it best, but like someone intended for this to be main lenses through which you experience the game is always having character on the screen and text box at the bottom. That's it. Now, how the conflicts escalate, let's call them conflict, but mostly friendly duels, is then you get warped into the card game world and you sling some spells. But this is where I need to talk about a gameplay feedback loop. Okay?
Oh.
Because for better or worse, and there are pros and cons to it, you are not playing exactly the same. And why I mean by that? The core rules are the same for you both. But some certain aspects are different. And you, slowly progressing the game, you start to notice. Because, okay, running back down, you start kinda I don't want to spoil too much of it, but you are not amnesiac, but you are a newcomer. You as a reader don't know what the protagonist went through in the past, and that's the mystery going on to understand your own protagonist that you are playing as. And every time you lose, something weird happens. And because of that contrivance, you never lose. Okay? There's some time rewinding. It's not too much. It's just fun, right? You are flawless with fighting, and everybody considers you a completely bonkers duelist, right? But you have plenty of time to figure out the strategies and counter strategies. But that's one point, because the game recognizes you have flawless streak, and every time you lose, you don't. So you come up with a good counter for your opponent, and you beat them. But the more you grow your collection, because you start with barely anything, and you acquire some cards, then you start to recognize, wait a moment, wait, why 6? Mine does 5. You recognize they are better at spells than you. And their cards are, even though they're the same, they're just a tiny bit different. And that is very interesting to me.
That you have different cards than them? I don't understand.
You have exactly the same cards, but the power of how you invoke them results in different things.
Okay,
For
so
example,
it's okay.
There is a card that heals you. That's it. That's all it does. You get healed. There is an HP pool, whatever. I don't want to go too deep into the gameplay itself. But theirs heals for 7, and yours heals for 6. Because they are more seasoned casters than you.
Okay.
So that's the feedback loop. And sometimes their cards also heals for 6, because now you're fighting against someone who is not that skilled at healing, but he's skilled at something else.
Okay. No, yeah, I see. So you have the different characters and they have their own things that they're adept at.
Yes, and cards aren't something as we recognize them as cards, because I keep saying duels represent rituals and spellcasting, and cards are only a conduit by which you invoke a spell, meaning the cards don't have a set-in-stone effect per se, as you imagine a card game having, but rather, however skillful you are at healing would determine how much you heal by card. And that's the way they try to have a feedback between the gameplay and how the story unveils. There are different people, they have different specialties, they are different in school about different schools of magic to compare to Hogwarts. And that is represented in gameplay of how even something as fundamental as effects of cards resolve.
I'm thankful you mentioned the gameplay stuff at the end there, because I was getting worried this has turned into a world building video again.
I would never do that, okay?
Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't, MR.
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting.
And to be fair, like I said, it has its positives and it definitely has its negatives. Because slowly incrementing the difficulty keeps the game challenging. And funnily enough, the game starts, I think it asks you about which difficulty you want. Do you want story or normal? I'm like, what? Okay, that sounds scary already. So there's only 2 difficulties. Story, which is lower difficulty, and the normal. Like, what? What does that mean? And boy, do I tell you, normal is brutal. It's absolutely brutal, the game. And it's interesting because it's brutal in a way that demands you. Demands maybe is the wrong word. It kind of expects you to lose, recognize you can lose, adapt and overcome. Because you have that unique ability in the story. Like, it kind of works, but by the end, the game is just a mess. I'll be honest. The end is just annoying. Because the power difference between the opponents and you is I don't know if you know this concept in card game, but you basically run FTKs all the time. First turn kills, so you need to end the game before it begins.
What, you have to?
Yeah. Otherwise,
Are
you
you
can't
sure?
have second turn.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. Do you mean opponents will also FTK you?
No. They will have such a powerful first turn, they follow up is impossible to beat, pretty much. So you need to win on the first.
Something skill issue.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is you can't counterplay. Brain too small.
Yeah, exactly.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, brain small brain. Yeah. Salty, very salty. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it is. But
Okay, that sounds interesting.
I beat it. It was challenging, and it was very interestingly tied in with the Arkham horror. Although, when it comes to story, if you read Arkham, you read them all, mostly. So I wasn't surprised by anything. But the gameplay was super unique.
Yes, and that's what you need to make a VN interesting.
Yeah,
That sounds really cool. Called Kamifuda. Interesting.
I recommend. So, how about you? Did you have some weird gameplay examples?
Yes, it's weird in a different direction because I want to talk about 428 Shibuya Scramble.
Oh boy.
It's weird in a few ways, like I mentioned. One is that it is shot entirely in live action with real people as actors for the characters in the story. For some people, they say it's off-putting because, you're used to 2D sprites or anime stuff and whatever, but I really loved it, and I really loved how 428 Shibuya Scramble really goes hard on the whole live-action TV series.
All right.
Mood it has going for it.
Yeah.
Because the main story is about a kidnapping case that goes out of control, and you soon discover that there's more than meets the eye. But there are 5 main characters in this VN, and for each in-game hour, which is basically each chapter of the story, you play as each of these 5 characters as they experience the plot going on around them. Some of them are interconnected with each other, and some of them have nothing to do with each other. But of course, as you read each story chapter and as the plot develops, things get really interesting in unique ways. And so, of course, there's a pretty unique choice system involved where you have to go through some people's stories to unlock segments of other people's stories within a chapter. But what I want to talk about here in terms of gameplay is that once you finish 428, it has a whole ton of bonus content at the end. It's got like a spin-off story in a different genre of a whole romance in a hospital setting.
What?
Yes, it has a spin-off.
So real.
It has like a spin-off action intrigue section where it's animated in like a typical anime style.
Wow.
And it also has a few mini games. One of which is a quiz show where it's like you are being quizzed by the contestant as they ask you trivia questions about the game and you have to answer them correctly to unlock more bonus content. They'll say stuff like, this one character who was the microbiologist, what was the name of the virus he was researching? And they give you like 4 different names and you have to pick the right one.
Wow, okay.
There's one part where you go into like I said, when you finish the story, you can go back to a specific choice window and they unlock a new option to explore like this building down this weird dark alley. And then you go in and you are like in a freaking old school first person adventure game with you going forward and backwards and left and right down a maze.
Oh my god.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Let me start through this. At the moment you brought quiz about the game itself, oh my god, that brought me so many memories, because that was the premise behind X-Blaze sequel, Lost Memories. And for a lot of people, I presume, going into a game in which the gameplay element was you walking through labyrinth, answering question about settings lore was the most boring shit ever. Okay? But I felt like I was specifically targeted. I pushed my glasses back to my nose as I said to myself, I'm ready. This is for me. Because that's hilarious. I love that part in X-Blade that just had you quizzed even on stuff outside of the game as long as it pertained to the lore of the entire setting.
Okay, so we're back on world building again, I see.
Okay, no, because the second example is when you said that the mini games unlock after the game is finished, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have only one example, and it's from my favorite title of all time, Dead End Ages.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and I'll be absolutely honest. The moment I unlocked those mini games, I immediately shut down the game because I don't want to play this game anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you know my take on Dead End Ages, okay? I was like, yeah, cool, bye.
Well, okay, but it was still bonus content, right?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was very unique. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, at least you got through the main appeal, the main story plot line. Okay, and to a certain degree, that's what happens in 428 as well. It's a lot of the mini games are silly and just meant for you to have fun. There's a few tidbits of bonus info, but I don't think it really affects much. So I mean, so if you really wanted to just end 428 once you get there, that's fine. I think it's like a 20-hour story or something like that, maybe 20, 25. And then there's like another freaking 10 hours of bonus content. So if you don't want to, that's fine. But if you're the sort of person who's like, I just gotta keep exploring this stuff just for the sake of whatever new weird or zany genre shift they're gonna pull on me, that's cool too. Like, like when I'm now playing a platformer involving a water bottle cleaning up trash.
Why?
Exactly. It's like, I don't get it, but this is very funny and I never expected this.
That's so hilarious. Although I did mention the quiz because I feel like putting such a quiz at the end is exactly the solution the X-Blaze in a way needed for people not get angry at that. Because yeah, if you don't want to get quiz, don't. And if you want, you can do the quiz. Now, hearing what you just said, I want to get tested after reading the VN. Give me the test. I want to go to the exam.
But exactly, you raised a good point. This is after. It's not, obviously they're not going to do it in the middle. They're not going to block you in this main story. It's the sort of thing where they put it to the side and it's optional and it's, you know, ideally at the end too, so you have all this knowledge. So if you have a VN with all of this oddball minigame, weird, non-conforming material in it, does that make 428 a gameplay visual novel?
Oh god, damn, that's true. This is where you're going with that. Okay. Because the gameplay element is so detached and it's such an extra, does that even change the VN?
Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I would say no. 428 is definitely not a gameplay visual novel. Sure, it's got the bonus content at the end, but that's really... If you're talking about 428 as a visual novel, you're going to be talking about its main story. That's where the plot twists are. That's where the character development is. That's where all the hype moments happen. And I think it would be very unfair to start classifying it because of the extraneous stuff that is simply meant to be a humorous end to the VN. You know, after the credits sort of material.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. This in no way could, in my opinion, classify it as a gameplay VN. Just because it has some gameplay at the end that is completely... To say optional is to understate it.
Exactly. It is optional. Because if you finish the VN and then you start seeing all this stuff and you're like, I'm not really interested and check out, like you did with Venus Blood, then, you know, again, 428 is not a gameplay VN if you've never touched
Yep.
a single lick of gameplay.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Huh.
But yes, I think that does raise an interesting point. And because there's other titles that love to do that too, where they have like the bonus room where the developer has their own in-universe character to start talking about you, about the process and all the director's cuts ideas that were floating around. It's obviously not meant to be part of the main thing. It's just a cool little, I guess, non-canon, breaking the fourth wall sort of thing to give director's commentary.
Oh yeah, and I always appreciate if there's some sort of developer's commentary because it's not so common.
It really isn't much nowadays, huh?
And there's only a handful of examples I can give, and doubly so, even less so, maybe that's a better way of saying it, artist commentary. When was the last time you heard that?
Wow, well, I'm not very familiar with the whole artist commentary. Hopefully it'd be something I can understand and can appreciate.
I remember I was so surprised when at the end of runs 5, specifically that, there's a bonus section. Yes, you can view all CGs with artist commentary saying how they drew it and why that way. Like, what? That's the first time I heard about such a thing.
Interesting.
Right? I have never seen such a thing explored in other titles. Why not? These are so cool.
Nice. Okay, so, MR, is there another title you want to talk about in terms of gameplay that we can cover pretty quickly?
Yes, I can go over pretty quickly with that. This is totally a new title we haven't heard from me before. So let me introduce you to Venus Bot Guy, okay?
Hey, we have heard this.
Oh, scammed. Okay, so a very quick recap for those who totally don't know this game, because I have never talked about this before and will not do that in the future. Wink. It's a dungeon defense strategy game set in a desolate world on the brink of looming doomsday or global catastrophe, some sort of world crisis. You play a role of a ruler of a magical kingdom hell-bent of reaching a solution to the given crisis and overturning a religious nation that branded scientific discoveries as heresy against the divine. So that's the setup. And the gameplay, the dungeon defense part, is just so good. I don't know why. It feels just so good. Every single time when I discover I could arrange my unit differently. It is so enjoyable, and, which is very important, it has such a good tie-in to the story and a great feedback loop. And just for the purpose of time, to go blitz mode on this, my probably favorite moment, because ultimately the baseline aspect of units, their stats, is shared across Venus Blood series, but they didn't explore the part of you defending a country. And this is pretty much it, because you have a scientific country and your city flies. So you travel with your city and you defend from intrusion. Super weird. But in certain countries you arrive to, they approach the assault differently. And probably my favorite is the Undead Land. When the light does not shine, and it reflects in the gameplay completely. The game even warns you, wait a moment, prepare your night units. There is no light. There is no day. It's only night here in this kingdom. And
So
until you finish the chapter.
Yes, so that affects gameplay in some aspects, like making units stronger or some weaker or elements.
Yes. Yeah, like defending units cannot defend backline, archers cannot shoot unless they have night trait. Blah, blah. It has an effect on gameplay.
Very cool.
And the game say, oh, wait a moment, this is night. You won't be having daylight at all. Prepare.
Yes.
And funny enough, the game supports it because when it comes to recruiting units, they like being recruited in an environment that suits them. So suddenly, if you haven't been recruiting before, now you have a good opportunity to get yourself some undead units, etc. And game incentivizes you to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy that. And it's...
Yeah, so when you have a title like Venus Blood Gaia, which is heavily gameplay focused,
Yep.
To the point where maybe even more than half of it is the gameplay side of things.
Yes.
You really appreciate that, right? And you really appreciate having an in-depth system that you can sink your teeth into, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's ingrained in such a way, it's tied to the arc of that place. Werewolves hate that place because they don't see the moon. That's the intrigue. Like, oh, maybe I want those units because it will help us overthrow this country. Because they kind of want the cycle of day and night. Otherwise, they have no transformations. And they are stuck in some form. Like, huh. It's reflected in gameplay. Oh, yeah, I want more of that. Again, in the interest of time, I won't be elaborating on more points that I did, but the fact that they go in depth in such things to incorporate story in the gameplay and its feedback loop, both in the case of this kingdom, but also with unit stats, and in a sort of contrived, weird way, power of friendship kind of deal in which you recruit some commanders from opposing factions and you grow your unit that way. And they help you combat some environments and some hostile tricks some kingdoms may implore on you. So like very cool back and forth in a sort of arms race way.
Okay. Yes, that sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Especially, and obviously you get to lead your units and you get to see them improve over time and you get attached to your favorite ones.
Oh my god, we're going to spend 3 hours more if I start doing that. Because the fact that you get so attached to the units that you recruited and you configured them like that. You said, oh no, this guy has to be ranged, so I give him this title that gives him these skills. I want him to flank attack, ignore armor, do something like, oh, this is so good.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that. We'll just have to tell the readers and all our viewers that there's some great attachments to be made.
Yeah, I don't think it came across, but in case it didn't, yeah, I recommend this game. Please do it. Do it for me.
Venus Blood Gaia, specifically. There's a lot of them, aren't there?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So far, all the translated ones I liked. So you can't go wrong with any of those.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'm glad we got to share some interesting gameplay titles and whether or not they count as gameplay visual novels. So on that note, I think it's a good time to wrap it up. And thank you everyone for tuning in to our station. I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, thank you very much and VNture out.
VNture out.